I call to order this meeting of the Scottsdale Unified School District Number 48 Governing Board. Today is Tuesday, June 28th. The time is 5:03 p.m. I would like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Vice President Dr. Hartwells, can you please lead us in that?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Dr. Hartwells. Before we move on to, we're going to have roll call here. 2C, starting with my far right.
Jan Michael Greenberg.
Julie Sanowski, and we do have a quorum with 3 members present this evening. 2D, approval of the agenda. The superintendent has informed me that we will need to pull action item 8I from today's agenda. Dr. Menzel will discuss this particular situation in his comments today. Meeting decorum.
We need to approve the agenda, though, with that.
Okay, so.
Sorry, which item is being pulled?
We're going to pull 8I. That's the bottom one.
Oh.
And with that, I make a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor to approve the agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0 with an amended agenda. Meeting decorum. Everyone can see the meeting decorum up there. Citizens attending and or participating in Scottsdale Unified School District meetings, either in person, virtually, or telephonically, are required to observe the same rules of order and decorum applicable to members of the governing board and staff. Unauthorized remarks or demonstrations from members of the audience, yells, outbursts, and or other disruptions are not permitted. Members of the public are not allowed to approach the dais at any time while the governing board meeting is in session without express permission from the governing board president. We will move on to agenda item 3. Are there any student and staff recognitions this evening, Dr. Menzel?
Well, good evening, President Sanowski, Vice President Hartwells, and Mr. Greenberg. Appreciate you being here this evening. I know that the other 2 board members wish they could be here, but have reasons that they cannot. While school's not in session, we generally don't have in-person celebrations, but that doesn't mean we don't have anything to celebrate. And so I want to highlight a few things that I think are important. We haven't met in this setting since all of us took part in commencement ceremonies last month, but we continue to collect information and learn of the many achievements of Scottsdale Unified School District's class of 2022. I want to just highlight a few brief profiles of this year's senior class. 1,842 students graduated from our 5 high schools and online school for a 92% graduation rate. With 1 high school remaining to be counted, the class of 2022 has earned $74 million worth of academic, athletic, and community scholarships. 11 National Merit Scholarships have been awarded, with possibly more being named next month. 1 U.S. Presidential Scholarship in Career and Technical Education. 117 Arizona Department of Education Seals of Biliteracy, 60 Arizona Department of Education Seals of Arts Proficiency, and 1 U.S. Military Academy appointment. Additionally, members of this year's graduating class received state recognition in music, performing arts, visual arts, and athletics, including 2 state championships in swim and dive, 2 state championships in tennis, and the state open division in football title. We could not be more proud of SUSD's class of 2022 and the way they achieved and the way they did in the times they did. Better yet, we know the best is still ahead. It may be summer, but things are also hopping at SUSD. As we continue our work to fill pandemic-created gaps in student learning and prepare our 5th graders for middle school and 8th graders for high school, there are district summer bridge and summer boost camps underway, with state-sponsored Jump Start camps set for July. There are no summer STEM, ELD, or there are summer STEM, ELD, reading, fine arts, and music camps too. So we have a broad array of opportunities for our students. In-person and virtual high school summer school is underway as well, with students working to improve previous grades, getting ahead for next school year, and some even taking electives that they don't have time for during their busy regular school year schedules. All told, more than 2,000 SUSD students are engaged in summer learning, and that doesn't even include Community Ed's Kids Club and middle school and high school athletic camps. And students aren't the only ones that are learning this summer. More than 500 SUSD educators are taking part in a variety of professional development institutes in subjects ranging from, for example, best teaching practices for dyslexic students and new online gradebook software to world language technology integration and makerspace training. These investments of time that are being made this summer by our teachers are investments in each and every SUSD student. Lastly, the heat has turned up literally and figuratively on our bond projects. Demolition of the old Kiva is ongoing as the new modern structures are being finished. Site preparation continues on the new Pueblo, and work has begun on the Tavon improvements as well. Meanwhile, principals are moving into their offices. Tonalia's elementary grades have completed their move to Yavapai, and Yavapai staff are back at the Miller Road campus. So for anyone who believes that a school district shuts down for 9 weeks in the summer, we have evidence to the contrary. On behalf of the district's administration, I want to offer my heartfelt thanks to each and every SUSD employee for having contributed in so many ways every day to the success of this past school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel. Thank you, Dr. Menzel. Next part of our meeting is public comment. Were there any requests for public comment? There were no requests made for public comment. Moving on to agenda item governing board reports. 4 governing board reports. Now is the time to share governing board reports. Governing board members. Your name is not matching with the indicator on my screen, but I know your name is not Patty Beckman. So, Board Member Greenberg.
I just wanted to update the board. We did have a scheduled audit committee meeting a few weeks ago. Due to an oversight that was my fault entirely, I missed that meeting and we did not have a quorum to proceed. We did have 2 audit committee members though present, so there was an informal discussion just with staff about the ideas that staff felt would be appropriate in proceeding forward. I discussed with Superintendent Menzel after the fact to get a recap of what admin's thoughts were working with the city of Scottsdale, and it appears that what we will likely be pursuing is an HR internal audit, given that there's been high staff turnover there. We have brand new leadership coming in June, which we welcome our new leaders there, and just we feel that an internal audit may definitely support their work in revamping that department. We did discuss the special education audit, but because the special education task force is ongoing and we had not yet been updated on that, we did not feel it would be appropriate to proceed at that time. So I just want to give you an idea of where the work is, and I apologize again profusely for missing that meeting. Thank you.
Board Member Greenberg, thank you for your update on the audit committee. And Dr. Hurtwells, no comment? Okay. I really appreciate the comments made by Dr. Menzel during today's celebrations. I was going to share similar, so I will cut to the chase with my board report. We do hold great appreciation to the financial gifts that are indicated in our agenda today, specifically provided to many parts of our district, our APT and PTOs, specifically from Cherokee Cochise, Copper Ridge, and Mountainside Middle Schools, the AZ Community Foundation, directing a gift to Coronado High School, First Funds for Robotics, that was a very generous donation, the Charos, Wesley Bloom, Krista McCarthy, Virginia C. Piper, and I cannot forget the senior class of 2022 from Saguaro High School, making a generous contribution to our district. And I note that last night our governing board met to conduct the superintendent's annual evaluation pursuant to governing board policy CBI and Dr. Menzel's employment contract. State law permits the board to award up to 20% of the superintendent's base salary as performance-based pay. Dr. Menzel's contract allowed up to 4% of his base salary for the 2021-2022 school year. The board, after evaluating Dr. Menzel's performance and the employment contract, the board took action to award Dr. Menzel $7,000 in performance pay for this past school year. Yes, there's a lot going on in our district. The work doesn't stop in SUSD, although it looks a little bit different over the summer. And with that, I will note that we are open for business and are currently hiring other individuals who value supporting our district public schools. Seeing that there are no other governing board reports and no public comments, we will move on to superintendent's comments, agenda item 6.
Thank you, President Sanowski and members of the governing board. There are two items this evening because we have a very long agenda, but the first is related to safety and security. Last week, we had an opportunity, a team of SUSD employees along with representatives from the Scottsdale Police Department to meet for a period of time to talk about our current safety and security protocols and opportunities to enhance those safety and security protocols as we prepare for the upcoming school year. As you know, the unfortunate events in Uvalde have resulted in every school district taking the time to assess potential vulnerabilities and the kinds of things that can be put in place to ensure that our learning environments are safe for both students and staff, and that we've taken appropriate measures. I would submit that as we review all of the things that Scottsdale has done in partnership with the police, what we did in terms of creating the single point of entry in the front offices, and our other security protocols, that we have many of the elements in place already. But we will be conducting a review of every facility, and I know our new Director of Security is here this evening, Josh Friedman. Welcome, Josh. And he'll be working with our teams on the site to conduct that review before school starts. The item that we removed from the agenda this evening is another one of those opportunities to enhance safety and security by providing access to our video technology in the event of an on-campus emergency. While we're finalizing the language of the agreement, we believe that this partnership with Scottsdale Police Department addresses a concern that the police chief often will say: when seconds count, the police are only minutes away. And what we're trying to do is ensure that we have the ability for local law enforcement to have access to the video technology in the event of an on-campus event, an emergency that would require police interaction. So we're finalizing the terms of that agreement, so we wanted to pull it off because there are a few outstanding issues. But I thought it was important that our public knows that during this summer, we've been taking specific measures to ensure that when our students and staff come back for school on August 3rd, we are prepared to do everything we can to ensure the safety and well-being of all who are engaged in the Scottsdale Unified School District learning environment. The second thing, I just want to build on what Mr. Greenberg said about the audit committee. Earlier, I received a draft proposal from the City of Scottsdale auditor with respect to the proposed HR audit. We're working on scheduling a meeting of the audit committee to review that, make any proposed changes to it before we bring it to the governing board on August 2nd for approval. So I appreciate the work of the audit committee. I know that this is time sensitive in some respects, but really by elevating the HR component, we're in a position where with new leadership we can reflect on our practices and have that outside set of eyes to help us improve what we're doing for the benefit of all who are a part of our system. And with that, I'll conclude my comments.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel. With the conclusion of superintendent's comments, we will move on to agenda item 7, consent agenda. I would like to propose a motion to let me ask if any of the governing board members have any comments they'd like to share about the consent agenda as it's presented. Vice President Dr. Hartwells.
May I pull item 7W, please? No?
We can't pull, but is there a prohibition against asking questions about items anyways?
asking questions about any of the items on the consent agenda. You all have already approved the agenda for this evening, so it would be difficult to undo that motion. So if you can ask your questions about any of the consent items, and then if we can't move forward in that manner, we could try to go back to revise the agenda motion.
I have questions I would like to ask about item 7W.
Please.
To whom shall I direct those questions? You, Dr. Menzel. All right. So just a quick summary for the community. This is the approval of the IGA with the City of Phoenix for the SROs for the following school year, or upcoming school year, and specifically those schools are Ingleside and Arcadia High School. So this is the City of Phoenix Police Department. The City Council for the City of Phoenix approved substantial increases in salaries, which the district pays for the CROs up to some percent, a cost share. I note in the agenda description that the current contract absorbs about $16,000 increase over the previous salaries that the district was paying per total for both SROs, but there was a bigger increase in police salaries, police officer salaries, that the city granted. So where's that delta?
So what I know from the communication that we received on this agreement, that the costs for the 22-23 school year were established before the city council approved the pay increases. So whatever was incorporated into that agreement was probably a normal adjustment for the officers involved. They are not passing on the cost of the substantial increase that the city council approved in the 22-23 school year. They have signaled that they would anticipate passing that on in the subsequent year, but there's always a period of review so that we'll have an opportunity to indicate any concerns that we have with respect to what that might mean from a cost perspective for the school district.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate that they honored the negotiation at the time that it was negotiated. I also observe this is a one-year agreement, and I would also like to signal that I would envision that there would be a recalibration of whether the district will absorb those big increases, given that the SROs are the highest paid persons on our campuses. So I thank the City of Scottsdale and the Police Department for honoring their initial agreed to in good faith negotiation, as well as a limited term on the agreement to allow for a more real-time recalibration once we get there next spring. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Appreciate those comments, Vice President Dr. Hartwells. With that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda at this time. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor to approve the agenda, consent agenda, say aye.
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 Motion passes 3-0. And at this time, we move on to our action items. And we have quite a bit of them. At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the action items.
8A, we need a presentation from Shannon.
Yes, 8A.
Okay. Good evening, Board President Sanowski, Vice President Dr. Hartwells, members of the board, Dr. Menzel, and community. Tonight, we are bringing forth the 22-23 proposed budget. I will start by saying that the budget we're proposing and sending for proposal and adoption and what we have here tonight was done before the state had their budget prepared, which did not happen until for the wee hours of Thursday morning. So what we're looking at is what we anticipated could happen. We'll move forward with that because that's what we have for the proposed and adopted. we'll do, like we did last year, a revision in the fall, and state statute allows for that, for us to do a revision in the fall once we have the correct forms and the correct information from the state. So at this point, the forms and everything that we have are from the state based off of last year's numbers where they just tweaked the information. So when we're looking at some of this stuff tonight, please understand we do know it's going to change. We're going off of what we knew last week. Excuse me. Going to go. So with the budget development, we are statutorily required to propose a budget no later than July 5th. This is what we're doing tonight. We will have a link on our website that directs individuals to the proposed budget for them to review. That will go on our website, I anticipate tomorrow, but like worst case scenario by Thursday. But that will be on our website for the community to view. Then we have a 10-day period where we must have that available before we do the adopted budget, which is why we have a special meeting then called for July 12th, where we'll bring forth essentially the same budget. It is the same budget, but it is brought forth for adoption. Districts must adopt their budget no later than July 15th, and again, provide a link to the website for ADE so that they can view that budget, which will be done this week. For the budget development for this particular budget, we did M&O estimates were presented to the governing board in November, January, and again in March 8th. A lot of that done based on what was brought forth with what we thought could potentially happen, as well as information from our work with the interest-based negotiations with our employee teams. Capital estimates were also presented to the board in January and April. And then we did interest-based negotiations with our 3 employee groups, beginning in the fall and ending, in some cases, the very beginning part of June. And I know that's coming forth. Like I said, at the time we put this together, we didn't have a budget from the state, so we went off of what we thought could possibly happen. We know that we had to propose essentially by tonight, and we have called for that special meeting in July for the adopted budget. Because we didn't know where things could land, and there was a variety of, there was a large span of what the budget could possibly look like, we did know that the state minimum was 2%. We felt like it would be higher than that. We just didn't know where it would land. So the budget that we're bringing forth has a 5% increase in it. We know that there's more now that the state budget is done, we know that that's going to increase more. But what we're proposing will bring forth for the proposed and adopted has a 5% increase. With the budget, we had to use the old forms from the state. And the old forms from the state have this current year's amount per student in it. And there's 2 ways to really adjust your budget to bring it up. Base level goes up, amount that you get per student, or ADM has to go up. Since we couldn't adjust the base level, since we didn't know what it was going to be, our only way to move forward, knowing that our budget would increase some, was to inflate or to raise up the ADM, average daily membership, which then trickles into the student weight count, which gets us to, helps us get to the balance that we needed. So for this budget, that's what we've done. We know that. But that's how we had to move forward to be able to get the budget where we anticipated it being, so that we had approximate rates for setting the tax rate, but also moving forward with what we knew we could do. And then, unfortunately, our teacher experience index decreased a little bit from what we thought. I will tell you that looks like a very small amount. A very small amount actually equates to about $1 million. So very small change, but it is unfortunately money. This was possible changes to the state budget. Obviously, we know that's not really the case now. We knew that the minimum, because of inflation, was going to be 2%. It's really in the 7% range now. So what we proposed was 5%. We'll be upping that by a little over 2% more when we do that revision in the fall. Group B weight also had a change. It has to do with a category that actually a lot of students fall into, and it moved from 0.092 to 0.29, so it was a fairly large increase in there. And then we anticipated the district additional assistance increasing. It did. which has never happened before. It did increase, but we thought maybe 2%. It increased more than 2%. So that as well will increase when we do our revision. So when we look at what changed from the time we did tentative budget approval in March and where we are for this proposed budget, we had to use a different base level amount than what we anticipated originally. We increased the average daily membership to reflect that, but the bottom line is the still bottom line of what we thought we were going to have back in March. So we increased that and bumped it up for the 5% that we anticipated we could originally be receiving. Additionally, this year we are bringing forth adjacent ways budget. We've had budget the past several years for adjacent ways. However, we, in prior years, had asked every single year for $4 million, whether we used it all or not. We'd gotten a fairly substantial balance in that adjacent ways, and we said, we don't need to keep asking for this. We're just building up an account, and it's a tax to our families. So we stopped that about 3 years ago. We've brought that balance down as we've been doing new schools. So we're now at a point where we need to ask for adjacent ways. We are asking for $2 million in adjacent ways. So we have $600,000 right now in carry forward. Our budget for adjacent ways will be $2.6 million, but the tax will only be on $2 million. So that will do an additional tax of approximately just over 3 cents. Or $3.45 annually per $100,000 of property tax. So it's a very small tax on that. What I will say, and this is a little bit later on, is even with that adjacent ways, our tax rate for next year, we still anticipate being lower than it has been. And for adjacent ways, so people know how that is used, it's used for sidewalks, sewers, utility lines, egress, ingress into our property, our areas, and for bus and fire equipment to be able to get through. So we know we'll need that for Pueblo and Tavon, which is why we're asking for those additional dollars. Like I said, we know that we'll have an additional tax for this for adjacent ways. However, our assessed valuation for this year has gone up so much that we are able to, one, increase our budget more than we anticipated in March, but also to be able to do the adjacent ways and still have a reduction on our tax rate. And again, this is all estimated. This will go through Maricopa County to verify, but at this time, this is what our estimate is. And again, like I said, it's a reduction. So the next steps are we will take this, it will be posted on our website with a link to Arizona Department of Revenue. It will have our budget and our budget summary pages for community to review. That link will be posted on the website definitely this week, but probably by the end of the day tomorrow. We will have a public hearing on July 12th. The public hearing will be, there's a public hearing required for the budget and the budget adoption. There's also a public hearing that's required for adjacent ways and that taxation. So that will also happen that day on July 12th. And then prior to September 15th, when we get new forms and have the correct information on the forms, we will bring a revised budget back to the governing board with that new information. We do know, even though this budget reflects $1 amount, we do know that our M&O all total from what we thought it would be is a $7 million increase, and our DAW will go up, or District Additional Assistance will go up about $1.1 million. So there will, provided that ADM stays about where we thought it would be, there will definitely be an increase that will happen when we bring this back in September. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Governing board members, do any of you have questions for Shannon? Vice President Dr. Hartwells?
Thank you, President Sinowski. Thank you, Ms. Crozier, for your presentation. I had a couple of questions with respect to the tax rates. So when would we know, when do we expect, what's the time frame that the district gets advised of the primary and secondary tax rates from the county treasurer?
Yeah, so that goes to Maricopa County. They review it. We get information from them mid-August that says this is what we calculate based off of what your budget forms are. We calculate your budget rate to be this. We look at it and say, yep, that's what we thought too, or or we're generally very close. And then once that is signed off, it goes to the state or Maricopa County to approve. So generally it's mid-August when they do the first part of it. We'll know in September what that tax rate is.
Before we come back for the September 15th deadline to finalize things,
We should know by then,
right?
yeah.
Okay, great. And then when will you have, so this presentation was really based off of kind of preliminary
Yeah.
numbers, understandably, because it took so long to get the budget. But now that the budget has been passed for education, when do you anticipate having adjustments in the numbers so that we might have?
So, I mean, the ADM drives all of this. Without knowing exactly what our ADM, and we're driven off of current year ADM. Without knowing what our current year ADM is going to be, which won't happen until school starts up, we make estimates. If we go off the projection that we thought for ADM, which is really just based off of what has historically happened, based off of that, right now, I know that the difference between what we thought in March and what is $7 million for M&O. And then approximately $7 million. And then the DAW is 1.1. We won't have that in budget form to bring to the board until, it's probably be September. I'm hoping by the time we do that, we'll have a better number of ADM, but school will have just started. So we'll know what the rates are. The question always lands with what is the ADM?
So just so I understand, let me say back to you what I'm hearing
Okay.
is that the financial terms themselves are not going to move too much. It will always be this game of figuring out what
What is the
ADM,
ADM?
where we end up sitting down.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Board Member Greenberg, any questions?
No.
Thank you. Seeing that there are no more questions, Dr. Menzel?
If you have a question, I have a...
Nope.
So I would just like to add a couple of things to what Shannon has pointed out. One matter of unfinished business at the state level is the matter of the aggregate expenditure limit. So while we are grateful for the increase in funding for public education and think it was an appropriate investment in our students and the future of Arizona, absent action by the legislature by March of 2023, we won't have the authorization to actually spend the money that was appropriated. We've been told that the governor plans to call a special session of the legislature in the fall to address that, but I think it's important to note for the board and our staff that while we'll make the adjustments in our budget, we'll enter into interest-based negotiations with our associations because there are provisions in each of the contract. If the state budget exceeds what we had anticipated, that we can review what we're able to offer to the employees of the district. But we have a caveat that we still have to monitor what happens with AEL and understand that absent legislative action, we still have some risk in terms of our ability to spend what was appropriated.
Thank you for bringing that into public view, Dr. Menzel. That is a very important, none of this budget increase means anything to school districts throughout our state if they can't spend the money that they're allocated. So
Absolutely.
Addressing the aggregate expenditure limit is important. Any other questions or comments? Nope, seeing none. At this time, I ask for a motion to approve action item 8A, approval of the proposed fiscal year 2022-2023 expenditure budget and call for a public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And all in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes 3-0. Moving on to action item 8B, approval of the strategic plan. Dr. Menzel.
Thank you, President Sanowski and members of the governing board. I think we do have a PowerPoint slide that will come up momentarily, and I will verbally ask for it to be advanced, but they're just a couple of slides. I want to start by thanking all of the individuals who have participated in one or more of the phases of our strategic planning process. In phase 1, there were 42 individuals. In phase 2, we had 36. In phase 3, 14. Some were part of the process from the beginning to the end, and some participated in just one phase, but everyone contributed in significant ways to the development of our plan. Typically, the process would have started in the summer or fall of 2020 after I arrived, and it would have been finished by June 30th of 2021. However, the pandemic disrupted anything that could be considered typical. In John Cotter's book, Leading Change, he notes that, quote, real transformation takes time, unquote, and that, again, quote, until changes sink down deeply into the culture, which for an entire company can take 3 to 10 years, new approaches are fragile and subject to regression. And finally, Cotter points out that transformation requires sacrifice, dedication, and creativity, none of which usually comes with coercion. So the process that SUSD followed as we developed our strategic plan followed those guiding tenets, that it's not something that's unilaterally decided and imposed by a single individual in the organization, but rather it's something that's co-created by people who have a vested interest in the success of the district. The framing for our strategic planning work was Mark Tucker's book, Leading High-Performance School Systems, Lessons from the World's Best. Scottsdale Unified School District did not have a strategic plan when I arrived in July of 2020. Academic achievement was good, but not great, and this varied depending on the subject area and grade level. For example, mathematics achievement in particular has been an ongoing area of concern in the middle school and high school level. In order to be the best, it is important to benchmark ourselves against the very best. And Tucker's book provided the foundation for rich dialogue over the course of the last 16 months as we completed 3 phases of the planning process. So if we can advance the slide. Phase 1 took place between February of 2021 and July of that year, and during that phase we updated our vision, mission, and core values of the organization. As you know, our vision is to engage all students in world-class, future-focused learning. We've talked regularly about our mission and values, and those guide everything that we do. Phase 2 started in August of 2021 and continued through January, where we focused our attention on what our goals were as an organization and the commitments under those goals. Commitments are important, as someone reminded me, if you have a goal, whether it's to lose weight or to run a marathon, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to commit to it and to commit to the people who are with you in order to be able to achieve that. So the commitments that were established as part of this process are agreements that we make, not only from the governing board table and from the administration table, but as an organization to advance outcomes for our students. The final phase of the process really focused on identifying key district-wide initiatives that would allow us to convene implementation teams designed to take the plan and operationalize it, and secondly, to finalize key performance indicators on specific goals related to the commitments. This plan is not filled with quick fixes or silver bullet solutions. There isn't a direct path from 60% proficient to 100% proficient in 1 year at every grade level. This is about developing the strategies and approaches over time that result in meaningful learning for all of our students. This plan does provide a clear and compelling roadmap for the kind of deep changes in our organizational culture that will elevate student performance and lead to progress toward our vision of engaging all students in world-class, future-focused learning. If we can move to the next slide, please. Key performance indicators are critical indicators of progress toward an intended result. KPIs provide a focus for strategic and operational improvement, create an analytic basis for decision-making, and help focus attention on what matters most. One of the things that our committee had in mind as we looked at our KPIs was that for the most part we wanted indicators that could produce comps as well. You know, what does that look like in other districts in the state of Arizona? What does it look like in districts across the country? Well, not every area of our strategic plan leads to nationally normed benchmarks, but many do, and that was one of our guiding principles. These are also indicators that will be monitored over time and reported publicly as a part of our commitment to transparency and accountability with our stakeholders. If we can move to the next slide. So when we think about the district initiatives that we will be moving forward with, the first is multi-tiered systems of support. I was an advocate for trying to find a a pithier name for this, but it really does reflect what it is, and that is, as we think about where our students are, there's a universal level of service, Tier 1, that we provide to all of our students. This is in both the behavioral area and academic area. Tier 2 is additional assistance and support, and Tier 3 is your most intensive support for students who need it. This is all driven by student needs and is focused on ensuring that our students achieve at a high level and have the support they need to access the curriculum at whatever grade level they're operating. The second initiative revolves around innovation in teaching and learning. For me, this is the one that I get most excited about, not because the others aren't important, but this is one that really reflects the R&D aspect of the work that we do. If we want to be world-class, we can't just continue to do more of what we've always done and expect different results. But it's irresponsible to make wholesale change without actually testing and finding proof of concept. In business, rapid prototyping is a concept where you try new things, you fail quickly, you make improvements, and you don't scale until you've gone through that process a number of times. We have a commitment organizationally to identifying innovative practices in teaching and learning that can refocus how we use time, to maybe free up time, as Mark Tucker talks about, for teachers to do that important work of collaboration and planning with colleagues, to do child-centered planning to ensure our students have the support they need. Through this innovation in teaching and learning approach, there are many things that we can do, piloting first in small areas and then going to scale once we have proof of concept. Talent attraction and retention is not a surprise that it's one of our goals and one of our initiatives. As you know, in this environment, it is challenging to fill our open positions, whether it's classified, certified, administrative. We have many positions where we've interviewed, not found the right people. We've had to repost. There are other positions that just remain vacant. This is a problem not only for Scottsdale Unified School District, but also for schools across the valley and even other businesses in the area. And we're competing for talent. As I see Patty Bilbray walk in, she's got to compete with food service providers across industry sectors and not just here in Scottsdale. So this is an important area of focus for us as well. Strategic partnerships really elevates the importance of getting outside of the walls of our school system and engaging our community in meaningful ways to create learning opportunities that enhance student success. This can be internships, externships, mentorships for our students. It can be other kinds of strategic partnerships. I think about the Charos and the Coronado Promise and the commitment not only to providing scholarship funding, but also to supporting the pipeline, recognizing that if kids get off track, it's really hard to graduate and continue into post-secondary education. So making sure that all aspects of the system are working, and so that's an important area of focus. And finally, we believe that it's important, actually imperative, to be good stewards of taxpayer resources here in Scottsdale. So we always want to be asking if we're optimizing the resources that we're using to optimize learning opportunities for students. And so these are the 5 core areas of focus as part of our plan. Next slide, please. So our next steps focus on establishing high-performing initiative implementation teams. We're very close to identifying the leads of those teams, and in July, we'll begin the process of inviting staff members to apply to participate on one or more teams based on their interest, their expertise, and their availability, so that we can go from what looks good on paper into action plans that will move us forward. We are continuing to finalize the dashboard for monitoring progress on KPIs, as well as the other dashboards that we have for the district. And then we will purposefully plan and facilitate district and site professional development to ensure alignment and coherence. This year, I believe you remember that we are going through the Cognia accreditation process. That's not something separate from what's in our strategic plan. It's a part of and aligned with what you see before you this evening. We will be working on ensuring that across the district, when we're bringing proposals to the governing board for consideration, we're tying that back to the components of the strategic plan. And then at the end, we believe it's really important to systematically celebrate our successes and acknowledge progress along the way. This is not, again, just a one-year plan. This is a multi-year plan to really take Scottsdale Unified from where we've been after 125 years of serving the community to truly being a leader in education and serving and meeting the needs of all of our students. You have in front of you in a separate packet the specific key performance indicators, and I don't believe we have a slide for that, but I am happy to answer any questions, and I know we've got members of the planning team here as well who are more than happy to join in providing responses to questions. But tonight we are excited to present this plan to you and look forward to any questions you might have.
Vice President Dr. Hart-Wells.
Thank you, President Sanowski, and thank you, Dr. Menzel. And thank you to all of you who have put in a lot of time and energy into developing the plan and get to where we are now. That wasn't just, it was staff, teachers, parents, community members, students. So good example of collaboration. I had asked this question a bit ago, and this is with respect particularly to the key performance indicators, but maybe more broadly. Could we go back one slide, that first slide that has the 5 goals? Thank you. One question was equal weighting on each of the goals. And it's a question. Do you envision each of these goals having equal weighting in terms of priority?
So I would answer that question by saying no, I don't think that they're all equally weighted. I think that's a product of the governing board meeting in August for our annual retreat and prioritizing as we look at what these are. So they're all important. So I don't want to downplay the significance of each of them, but some may be more important at a particular point in time. And I think those are determinations that are made annually by the governing board. Even in terms of what the target achievement is in a key performance indicator, the general provisions are directional in nature. And we aspire to 100% of our students achieving in some of these areas. We'd like to have no absences if we could have it. It's not realistic, but we certainly want to reduce chronic absenteeism. What's the target will be determined in part by the baseline data that we've identified, and then what's a stretch goal. So not something that's easily obtained. We want to make sure that it's challenging, but that it's also realistic. So if you want to go from 5% proficient to 95 proficient in 1 year, probably not realistic and demotivating. So annual performance targets are something that I envision being set by the governing board. And I think the weighting then also gets done at that time as we think about here's what the baseline data is telling us. Here's what we believe are the most important priorities. And that's critical because it's used to establish my performance goals. Those are used to establish cabinet performance goals. It's used to communicate with our building level leaders what the priorities are. So it flows logically from the governing board's retreat in August to establish those.
Thank you. So just to sum that up, these KPIs are living. They will
Absolutely.
be assessed on an annual basis, and they will impact the superintendent, and you do envision the leadership's
Yes.
performance goals as well on
Absolutely.
an annual basis. Okay, that was a question from the community. I just want to make sure that there's a clear answer provided. And also, I want to specifically thank Dr. Benson, who has been great in giving me her time in the last couple of weeks to dig into a lot of these KPIs. And given she's not even officially on board, I really appreciate your time. Thank you. And that you incorporated a lot of my comments. Much appreciated. Another question I have, and I have not been coy about my specific interest in science and science literacy. And one of the KPIs now that I see before me is and I do this as a thank you, and this is 9th grade ACT Aspire Science scores in particular. We know that our science scores in the ACT are the lowest of all of the subjects that are tested in that particular test at 11th grade. I think it makes sense that you back that up. Where we don't have science focuses in K through 8. And we also, and I guess I'm signaling that this is where I'm going to go in August, or at the board retreat, is the ACT composite scores. In the aggregate, there's a KPI for increasing that composite score, yes. I will, and I hope, and I think there is support in the community to do so, expect particular emphasis on science at all grade levels. And let me just argue what I think is a given and obvious to me, and that is critical thinking is important in every way, and that is a wraparound transferable skill set that will inform other areas of this test. So I feel strongly that that particular focus should be delineated in the KPIs, and it is in the 9th grade Aspire at the moment, and I appreciate that, but also just throughout the entire K through 12, even PK, right? Even pre-K. I also appreciate that I'm talking specifically in terms of the community about Goal 1 here, which I feel like is the output and the reason we're here. So I do give that a bit more weight than I do the other goals, with the exception of Goal 3, which is our talent and our teachers and our qualified professionals. So the way I look at that is Goal 3 is the inputs, Goal 1 is the outputs, and the others are important support infrastructure frameworks, but the body of the kind of leadership focus, in my view, should be Goals 1 and 3. So to that point, I appreciate that there is a specific KPI on a nod to Quality First certified pre-K programs, and continuing to grow that effort, the great efforts that are already and have been underway at Echo Canyon by Ms. Marin, and any chance I can to pat her on the back, I take it. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to seeing the results of those efforts. One more kind of bigger question that did come in from the community, and so I would like to ask it. And I do think that you have touched on the response to this question to some extent in your opening comments, but I'd like to just put a fine point on it because it's a very important point. And that is, in terms of comparing past strategies, and you don't need a comp analysis and kind of a chart, but rather in concept, what's being proposed in this strategic plan, along with those KPIs to implement that strategic plan. How does that differ with respect to what's been done in the past, in your view, and with respect to moving the needle on academic outcomes? So again, I'm going back to Goal 1, so that their students can be better prepared for their future, which is the vision here. So if you could just tie that back to that vision a little bit, and for those of us in the community that's been around and seen kind of some ebbs and flows in these efforts, how does this look different?
So I would submit a couple of different things. It's not that Scottsdale has never had a strategic plan, because they have. There was one in 2012. It was a thoughtful plan. But what happened from my perspective is you had a series of leadership changes which disrupted the implementation of the plan. And then with every new leader, you either had a different approach, sometimes unilaterally imposed. So you think about the Coronado Success Initiative, where there was, I think, clearly some need to address issues at Coronado, but how it was done created a lot of issues and concerns. So what I would argue is different about this is that we took the time to build the plan from the ground up, that we engaged a broad and diverse cross-sector of stakeholders to identify not only mission, vision, and values. Those are really important to ground our work, but then to get focused on these 5 core goal areas and the commitments. And we use the framing from Tucker's book because we want to learn from the best. So the lessons from high-performing school systems around the world, not just in the country, not just Arizona, was the framing for this planning process. So where you start matters in terms of what your aspirational goals are. And for us, we said we want to compare against the best. We want to compete against the best. We want to put systems in place to ensure that every child, no matter the zip code they live in, their circumstance of birth, if you are a student in Scottsdale Unified School District, your likelihood of being successful and being able to go anywhere and do anything that you aspire to will be supported because you've attended our school system. So I think we have clarity in the what, the why, and the how as a result of our planning process, and I think that's what's different.
Thank you very much, and I have no further questions.
Thank you, Vice President Dr. Hart-Wells. Board Member Board Member Beckman, my light says, but
Hello.
mixing me up. Board Member Greenberg.
Superintendent Menzel, I just want to say first, thank you very much for undertaking this work. President Sanowski and I had the pleasure of serving on this committee at the initial outset to see how it functioned, how it worked, provide some input, and that was early on last year. And it was very clear that it was an inclusive process. It was a process that was built to last, so that as administrations may change and new staff may come in, as new board members will come in, and as our community changes with new students and new families, we can say and always point to the fact that the foundation was always there. This was a community-developed plan. I agree with Vice President Hart-Wells that goals 1 and 3 are primary, and goals 2, 4, and 5 are supportive. And I don't think that we can do one without the other. I think a district whose sole focus is academic excellence and testing students to death will not develop a useful culture and climate conducive to learning. And I think we all agree on that priority structure and the importance of the other areas. I do want to note just kind of the historical nature of this in my mind, because back in 2018, this was something that I had very heavily campaigned on. We were not able to implement or start a plan in 2019 or 2020 because we had an acting superintendent. Dr. Creekar was, of course, a permanent superintendent, but he felt, and I agree with this, that because he was there to stabilize the district and serve as a transition to a permanent superintendent like Dr. Menzel, that starting a strategic plan would not be fair and would box in whoever his successor was. And now, a year and a half later, so now 4.5 years later, it is done. And I think there's two really important parts there. One, this is historic in a number of ways because unlike many strategic plans that Mark Tucker identifies in his book that tend to not last, not only was this inclusive, but the specific key performance indicators that have been developed can be objectively measured with specific goals that the board develops and the administration develops here on out. When you look at increase or maintain graduation rates, we can say graduation rates are 95%. We would like that to increase to 97%. And we can have concrete goals that allow us to measure performance. That is very new. The board started this process last year, and thanks to board member Vice President Hart-Wells working on a number of those measurable KPIs back in December that were adopted. And many of the staff who helped develop that. I'm very appreciative of that as well. And I think the second takeaway from this is just the nature of time. Significant change takes time, and just laying the foundation for significant change the right way, the inclusive way, the meaningful way, takes time. And I think often, no matter what government agency or company or organization you're talking about, people think, well, we can come in and overnight with a snap of the fingers change everything. And that's actually very disruptive and very damaging. You lose a lot of trust very quickly. The way we've done this has taken longer than we may have wanted, but I think the end result justified the way in which it was done. So thank you very much. I am supportive. I like that we have a clear groundwork for setting the priorities, as Vice President Hart-Wells noted, that we have clear groundwork for focusing on, what is that measurement for improved ACT Aspire science? How do we get there? How do we build that focus from the ground up, starting at the elementary and middle schools? And I think we have a very good framework here to help guide our decisions. So thank you very much to Dr. Cam, Superintendent Menzel, to all of our staff, everyone who participated in those meetings every month. They were very lengthy. I really do appreciate it. I'm very thrilled with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Greenberg. And I do note that we have many of our leaders, and I see some teachers here this evening, leaders from teaching and learning. And I look forward to hearing what those that are going to be working with our students directly. So as principals and directors, I look forward to hearing more back about how this is rolled out and what the thought is on our strategic plan as a district. So I do believe that this is going to be something that does withstand time. Our district's been around for 125 years. I don't quite think this is going to last that long because we will achieve all these KPIs at some point in time and we'll continue to move that needle forward. So yes, very appreciative to the hundreds of hours that were put into this, as well as the many staff members and community members that participated in this. And I note that some of our community members and parents that are here also participated in this. So thank you to them. Any other?
So our communications team has been working diligently to package this. This is hot off the press and still considered in draft form because it needs to get final proofreading. But what we envision, so for people to understand, is just a synopsis of the what, the why, and the how, and the roadmap for how we're going to move forward in operationalizing the strategic plan. So there'll be a nice way for people to understand all the work that we did in a bound document.
Super.
And I want to also thank Dr. Connie Kam, who facilitated this work, because she put in a ton of time to make sure that as a backdrop to our learning, we had access to other resources, models and exemplars from around the nation and around the world, and thought-provoking readings to ensure that we were challenged to think beyond just what we've always done into something that resulted in this final strategic plan recommendation.
Sorry, I got involved in my reading here. Awesome. This is excellent. And again, thank you to all of you that participated in this, because how do we know where we're going if we don't have a plan, right? Yep. Very good. Okay, seeing there are no more questions or comments, I call for a motion to approve 8B, approval of the strategic plan.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
And all in favor to approve the strategic plan, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Moving on to 8C, approval of the governing board district additional assistance pro statement. And I believe Dr. Menzel and Shannon are going to be addressing that.
So while Shannon comes to the microphone, one of the requirements as we proceed on the path to having the district additional assistance override on the ballot in November is for the governing board to approve a pro statement. Shannon will talk about the mechanics, and you have in front of you the statement as recommended for board adoption this evening.
Yes. Good evening, President Stanowski, Vice President Dr. Hartwells, members of the board, Dr. Menzel, and guests. Back in May, the governing board approved a resolution moving forward with the district additional assistance override. As a part of that, the governing board is required to submit a pro statement for the pamphlet that goes out to voters. And so we have submitted to the governing board a draft or foundation for that. And so at this time, if there's any changes or things that you would like added or removed, we do have a 200-word count that has to be within. And so that has been reviewed by outside counsel and by our counsel to make sure that it fits within what's required for the pro statement. And so we have brought it forth for approval.
Might I ask if you read it aloud?
Yes.
You want me to read it? I'll read it.
So that the public hears it at the board meeting here.
Just really quickly, this is just for the pamphlet pro statement language. This does not include the resolution language.
No, this is there's pamphlet language that goes in that's a requirement for our pamphlet. We have that on our website. So at this time through August 12th, the district has out that we're calling for pro and or for and against statements to go into that pamphlet. As a part of it, the governing board also submits a pro statement. So this is just to go into the pamphlet as the governing board pro statement.
So the governing board pro statement as presented this evening is schools are the cornerstone of a strong and thriving community, and Scottsdale is consistently ranked as one of the best places to live, work, learn, and play. Scottsdale Unified School District has provided 125 years of excellent education to the students of Scottsdale as a result of sustained and ongoing community partnership and support. As we strive to achieve our vision of engaging all students in world-class, future-focused learning, we ask for your continued support of the Scottsdale Unified School District and the students we educate. More specifically, the Scottsdale Unified School District Governing Board is asking you to vote yes on the continuation of the District Additional Assistance Override. A yes vote will provide ongoing funding for furniture, fixtures, and equipment for classrooms, athletic programs, fine arts programs, library support, curriculum purchases, technology support, and playground and facilities equipment. The standard of excellence in educational programming and facilities established through generations of community support is unparalleled in the Valley. We ask for your continued support and investment in the students of the Scottsdale Unified School District to ensure that legacy continues. Thank you. The Scottsdale Unified School District Governing Board.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel. Board Member Greenberg?
This might relate back to item 8A, but I think it's appropriate here. The 10%, the actual, what this statement is speaking to, this DAA override, is the revenue control limit that we're seeking to override impacted by the changes that the legislature has made with increased funding?
Yes, we'll meet that 14.5 million sooner than we anticipated.
Okay.
But we are, I mean, the resolution and what we're moving forward with is capped at a maximum of 14.5. So even though we will get to that 10% of the RCL sooner than we thought, we are capped at that. So that's not something that can change. We're with that number as it goes to the voters.
So it was a useful thing to increase the original proposed cap of 14 to 14.5 million. Is that?
I mean, yeah, originally we had it at 13, we went to 14.5. We met that max sooner than we thought. We didn't know at the time what the state would do.
Right.
But I think even with the number we have, we know there'll be inflation in the future. I think the number that we're at, we'll be able to move forward with what our needs will be in the future.
Okay.
I'm not overly concerned that in the future we're not going to have what we need.
Well, then I think as it relates to this pro statement, I'm very supportive, and I don't have any comments, and I don't know how it works in the pamphlet, if the bolded language remains bold in the pamphlet, but
We'll submit it that way.
Let's see, right?
but
see.
hopefully it does. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Vice President Dr. Hartwells?
Thank you, President Sinowski. Thank you, Shannon. And you had received my response in advance of this evening. I have no further comments on the merits of that pro statement. And I want to thank you for putting that forward and allowing us to read that this evening, and just reminding our community of how important continuing this DAA override is for the district going forward. So thank you for all your hard work on this, Shannon.
Thank you.
Yes, that support is very important for us to actually focus on our strategic plan, isn't it? All right, seeing that there are no more questions or comments at this time, I would ask.
Should I wait for the next item?
Yeah, stay in place. I'm going to make a motion to approve 8C, approval of the governing board district additional assistance pro statement. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Moving on to 8D, restatement of the retirement special pay plan. Shannon.
Yes. So again, Board Member Sinowski, Board President Sinowski, Dr. Hartwells, members of the board, Dr. Menzel and guests, we the district, many years ago, went into a retirement special plan for our employees. And what that basically means is that when you retire from the district, if your payout for sick and/or vacation is of a certain dollar amount, and depending on your age, then the payout goes into a special plan. The benefit of that is that it helps reduce taxes for the district, but it also can help reduce the taxes because it's done pre-tax for our employee. With that plan is a company called Precision, who is basically the trustee of the money when it goes into a 401A. So when you go into that special retirement plan, there's two options. There's an HRA, a health retirement account, or a 401A. Precision oversees our 401A and is kind of the trustee over that money for the employees. As a part of that agreement, it's a template of a contract that is used universally with all of the companies that are with Precision under their 401A. And with that agreement, there's laws that are changed within the IRS. And so as a part of that, every 6 years, they take back and say you need to do a reinstatement that essentially picks up all of the changes that IRS has made to laws regarding this. And so we're in year 6 where we need to bring back to the board the restatement of our agreement with Precision for the 401A. We've asked, kind of what some of the changes are. They're minor type things, and so I couldn't begin to tell you all of the changes that are in there. We would have to have Precision report back to what those IRS changes are. But essentially, this makes it so that our agreement, that's the boilerplate agreement that Precision has with all of their companies that they work with, are in compliance with IRS laws and regulations.
Thank you, Shannon. Governing board members, do you have any questions? Nope. Seeing no questions, I would like to make a motion to approve the restatement of retirement special pay plan. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Moving on to 8E, approval of selection of audit committee member. Pardon me?
I'll take this one.
Okay, Dr. Menzel.
So, as you know, we had a vacancy on the audit committee, and through the committee hub on our website, we invited individuals from our community to put their name forward for consideration, and we had 5 individuals who did so. I want to begin by thanking the 5 people who put their name forward for consideration. Tonight, having reviewed the individuals who submitted their interest and backgrounds for consideration, we had feedback from the audit committee itself, as well as from Sharon Walker at the city, and we are recommending this evening that we appoint Jason Klanoski, who is in the audience this evening, to serve as a member of our audit committee. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Vice President Dr. Hart-Wells.
No questions. Just want to thank Mr. Klonowski for stepping up to serve on the audit committee, and Mr. Greenberg for his actually leadership in getting the audit committee established. It's been a good value add for the district. Thank you.
Agree. Vice President Dr. Hart-Wells, thank you for making those comments. Okay, seeing that there are no questions or comments related to this action item, I would like to ask for a motion to approve 8E, approval of the selection of the audit committee member.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. 8F, nutritional services, talent acquisition and retention tools. Patty Bilberry.
So while Patty and Amy come up, I will just say that this is connected with Strategic Plan Goal 3.
And how excited we are that that is included in the strategic plan. Well, good evening, Dr. Menzel, President Snowski, Vice President Dr. Hart-Wells, members of the governing board, and our friend Gladys over here. Tonight, Ms. Goff and I are more than excited to bring to you the Nutrition Services Talent Acquisition and Retention Tools. So in an effort to find solutions to what we consider an extreme labor crisis, Nutrition Services met with the SSPA to discuss the proposals you see before you tonight. SSPA then asked our department to present these proposals to the Interest-Based Negotiations Team, or IBN. So tonight, with the full support of SSPA and IBN, we bring these 3 proposals to you tonight for approval. I think it's important right here for me to stop for a moment and note that these proposals before you tonight are fully funded by the district's Nutrition Services Enterprise Fund and has no impact to the district's maintenance and operations budget at all. You will also see all of the supporting documents in your governing board packet and also attached to tonight's governing board agenda. And with that, I'm going to open it up for any questions or any discussion I'm sure you have.
And I really appreciate you making that notation about the funding source behind this, so thank you. Vice President Dr. Hart-Wells.
Thank you, President Sanowski. Thank you, Ms. Bilbrey and Ms. Goff. First, I want to continue to applaud your entrepreneurial thinking. It is, I love it. I do. So if you could, for our community, there are 3 layers to
Yes.
these stipends and incentives, financial incentives. And I would like you, if you could you walk us through an example of how each one of these apply so that folks can understand what this package looks like, because I think it's really creative.
So thank you. So first, I'll start with what I would consider probably your more basic approach to what we can do, and it would be our retention and our referral bonus. So what we've done is our referral and hiring bonus, we have stated that any nutrition services employee who then refers an employee who makes it through their 90 days probationary period would receive a referral bonus of $500 after they make it through that 90-day time frame. That employee who then also works for us, makes it through that 90-day time frame, would also receive a $500 hiring bonus. Then we also have our retention bonus. So a retention bonus would be very similar to what the district does. However, we decided to split it up in 3 payments throughout the school year. Kind of helps dangle that carrot a little bit. And what we did is we did prorate it based on FTEs with a minimum of $500 for the year. So if somebody was a 3.75-hour worker, which we have a lot of those, they would still receive at a minimum $500 if they met all 3 payments. If you're a full-time employee, it would be $1,000 for the year. And we would pay out in 3 payments, a $300 payment in mid-fall, another $300 payment early February, so it helps make you through the Christmas break and you come back, and then a $400 payment at the end of the year, being the largest payment towards the end, that it helps kind of keep people moving forward in the year and feeling like they're recognized for the hard work they do. Then we have what I consider somewhat unique. We have a Geographic Premium. This was something that was really an outside-the-box thinking, because we have a lot of hard-to-fill positions. We have folks who make $13 an hour, but we're asking them to travel up to, let's say, Copper Ridge, with gas being nearly $6 a gallon, some places more than $6 a gallon right now. It's not going to happen. We're not going to have folks come. So we set a precedence that said, if you live more than 10 miles per I used the word MapQuest and told that was old-fashioned. It's supposed to be Google Maps now. So if you use Google Maps and it shows that your quickest route is 10 miles or more from the location at which you are assigned, you would get a premium, a monthly premium. And we've got that set right now at $100 a month for our employees.
So thank you. Let me clarify on that geographic stipend. Is the starting point home, or is the starting point
The starting point is home.
Okay.
And I think I need to clarify a little bit. We have lost a lot of our employees from the Scottsdale area. They've had to move out of Scottsdale. They cannot afford it. We have folks that have moved to the extreme west side, have moved out to the far east valley or the fringe of what I would call the Phoenix metro area. Those districts also need employees. They love working for Team Awesome. They want to be here, but it costs too much to drive. So that helps compensate them for coming in, and also honoring the fact that they still want to remain with SUSD.
Thank you. And that was actually the point I was trying to get to, which is that a lot of our nutrition services employees, the Team Awesome team, is not able to live, the reason you're proposing this is because we have to draw from potential employees who are outside of Scottsdale
Correct.
because of the unaffordability of living
Correct.
here on a $13 an hour wage. Right? Well, thank you. I love this. Again,
you.
I think that your
We're excited.
entrepreneurial thinking is an inspiration, and I applaud you for it.
Thank you.
Me too.
Yay.
Board Member Greenberg, anything to add?
Yeah, I would like to second Vice President Hartwell's comments and your comments about this gas stipend and the inability and unaffordability of Scottsdale. I think we've all seen this dramatically impact our working base. I've personally seen in my friends' apartment buildings people who are on fixed incomes forced out because of this. And I think it's a very sad situation, and anything we can do to support individuals who want to continue working for SUSD, but who cannot afford to live here, is great. I think these are brilliant ideas. The
Thank
gas
you.
stipend idea is fantastic, especially due to inflation in that area. And I also think it points to something perhaps that President Sanowski and Vice President Hartwells and Superintendent Menzel can discuss with the city of Scottsdale as part of our joint efforts there, our education committee there, about these types of issues and why affordable housing is so important. So thank you very much, as always. I did
Thank
want to
you.
note, there was a comment from the SSPA that they sent to me. I would like to read it out because I think it is worthwhile. Noting that nutritional services were invited as a job family to meet with the IBM team. SSPA is interested in their proposals being approved as a pilot for the district, as they are self-funded outside of district monies. It is through their collaboration and hard work and interest with working with SSPA that the nutrition services team stand before us tonight. They're only one of 6 job families that have met with the SSPA so far and the IBM teams, and we look forward to bringing with similar proposals forward for the other families. So thank you very much for leading the way.
It was
Thank
our
you.
pleasure.
And I think we're all better for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Dr. Menzel?
I just want to build on that and say this is an example of both the IBM process working the way that we envisioned when we started, and 2, the opportunity to pilot and scale. So we're going to learn from nutrition services on whether or not these are the right incentives to be able to attract and retain talent. If this works, then we can go and use that with other job families and other employee groups. And so you're leading the way, and hopefully it does work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks again. Seeing that there are no other questions or comments on this particular action item, I would like to move that we approve 8F Nutrition Services Talent Acquisition and Retention Tool. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Moving on to 8G, second read and approval of curriculum adoption for implementation 2022-23 AP US Government and Politics, AP Macroeconomics, and IB Economics. And I believe Dr. Kim Dodds-Karen is going to
She doesn't have a presentation, but she's available to
be
answer
ready to
questions.
answer questions. Are there any questions for Dr. Dodds-Karen? Yes. Board Member Greenberg.
I did just want to note, at the previous board meeting, I had requested certain documents related to kind of background information, kind of how the team scored things. I did not follow up there and did not receive them. That is my fault, though, just because I was very busy and not feeling well for the past couple of weeks. So I apologize for that. I should have done that. But as far as I'm aware, I think everything is acceptable in terms of this proposal. I've not heard any negative feedback or concerns via emails or public communication, so I'm okay moving forward on that basis. And I just want to know that that was my fault for letting that slip through the cracks.
Well, that's the reading that kept me up late last night, reading all of the rubrics, and they were very interesting.
Sent by Dr. Benson.
Sent by Dr. Benson, yes.
I've lied a second time.
Yes, they were.
Okay, I'm
yeah,
sorry, I did not see
They
them.
came in last night. So, interesting reading, and it was interesting to see the various sources and the comparative scores and comments, even more importantly, from the particular curriculum adoption committee members. So because it didn't have their names on there, it just there was a circle of what their role was. So that was very interesting to see that.
Then may I ask, since you had the time to review it, were there any concerns or did anything come out, bubble up from this where that maybe, well, since there's only three of us here.
Of course something bubbled up, right?
Okay.
Okay, so in looking at our strategic plan and our KPIs, I was kind of thinking of how this all works in, and there was an interesting comment. I believe it was made by a teacher that really threw a flag up, and it was about the use of resources in developing or in presenting standards in education. That was my own take on it and summary of the comments. And so, yes, as it is evident from the previous presentation of being creative, I encourage us to continue to do that, and it's not always just about a textbook, but there might be other resources like we have with the innovative, the VR.
Yeah, the Prisms of Reality.
VR, the reality, that kind of stuff. I think whatever is going to engage kids and encourage teachers to be creative, how do you not support that? So those were really the comments I was looking for. It was interesting to see that in the rubric evaluations from parents, administrators, and teachers. So, yes, there were some things that bubbled up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
And it was interesting to see one resource to another, the alignment of the varied evaluations on the rubric coming from different people, and they were kind of aligned, obviously that was a favorable resource versus the other. So it was interesting. Thank you for whoever put the rubrics together and also put that together for us to review. Thank you. Yeah. So now that can keep you up tonight for your midnight reading. Come on, we have to have a little bit of fun, right? Okay. Vice President Dr. Hartwells.
Thank you, President Sanowski. Thank you, Dr. Dodds, and for sending the materials. Actually, Dr. Benson sent them on your behalf, but I know you were shoulder deep in manila folders putting all this together. I have one question on the merits and then one kind of an overarching question with respect to committee curriculum committee selections. The overarching question is, are conflicts of interest forms or questions posed to any of the committee members and curriculum committee members generally, not specific just to these, but all of them?
Yes, Vice President Hartwells. We do provide our committee members at our very first meeting. Council comes and talks about open meeting law. We also sign an agreement, a confidentiality agreement that also does discuss conflict of interest. And so we talk about, if your best friend or if your sister-in-law is a rep for X company, we need to know about that and be sure that we are ensuring that the process that we're following is true to the work that we're trying to achieve.
Thank you for that. I think that's important for the community to know that process is in place. And then the question on the merits, and this is really a confirmation of my understanding, and that is that each in the three instances we have before us, the recommendation that the staff is putting forward to the board was the recommendation of the teacher or teachers on these curriculum adoption committees.
Yes, each of the teachers that participated in the various committees, combined with the other stakeholders on the committees, all felt comfortable with. And even for some folks where there might have been some question, I liked another book, or I wonder if this book might be more appropriate for the students in our classroom, in having conversations, in addition to our small committee work, the group was comfortable with everything. But yes, to answer your question, teachers were favorable of these resources.
Just to put a fine point on that, the teacher's recommendation for in each instance was the curriculum that is being put forward to the board.
Correct.
Correct. Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you.
All right. Board Member Greenberg.
That's a really interesting line of questioning. What is the balance between subject matter experts, regardless of status, whether it's a citizen or a employee or administrator or a teaching expert? What is that balance between subject matter expert and lay person that do we have some sort of metric that we go with where we try to balance that out, or how does that work?
Thank you for that question too, Board Member Greenberg. We don't have a policy or a consistent practice, I would say, with how many parents, how many general committee members represent our schools. This year, we made a concerted effort through Committee Hub in recruiting. One of the most difficult challenges we faced was timing. We kept that Committee Hub open for quite a while in an effort to get as many stakeholders involved as possible. That being said, we had targeted with 2 teachers per content area, and we also have to remember that this is a specialized content that we're asking for. So when we have an AP Gov, AP Econ, it's typically 1 teacher on the campus. IB Econ is 1 teacher. So specific to IB, we even contacted our coordinators for the IB program and the middle years program to see if they had any availability, even though economics was not their content area, would they like to serve and give input. So we did aim to have 2 teachers. Throughout the process, we did have 2 teachers popping in and out, but consistently, I would not say we had 2 teachers consistently present each time. We did have more parents than we did teachers. We did see that, though, as an opportunity for us to have some really great conversations with our teachers, and I know that Sarah's in the audience today. I don't know if anybody else is, but I think, and I hope she would echo the sentiment, the conversations in our small group really allowed our parent community, our school administrators, and the teachers to have some really great conversations, to your point too, Board President Sanowski, about what the curriculum is. So when we look at what our textbooks are, I likened it with our parents as a recipe. There's things that we're going to take from it that we think are really important. Then there's things that we might need to add, because maybe there isn't just enough here, and we want to make sure we have a more a broader perspective on something. So I think that that was really important too. But moving forward, to your question, Board Member Greenberg, I do think that as a district, we have an opportunity to set some expectations for who we have on committees, to do our best to attract as many teachers for input, because they are the people using the curriculum. But also, I would argue that having our parents on the committee is really important too, for a few layers. It's what they see, because it's coming home to their children as well, but also to serve as an opportunity to educate our parents about how we use curriculum in our classrooms for the benefit of our students, aligned to our standards, aligned to the goals, in this case, of AP or IB.
I appreciate that, and I agree. I think that in terms of community engagement, it is important to have community members on those committees to see that, in fact, there is a statewide standards, thank you, statewide standards, and that our curriculum must match those standards, and that whatever may be going on in the greater world of discussions, we have a legal obligation to teach to those standards, and that's what we do, and that's what the curriculum that we choose must support us in doing. But I do think that there are opportunities there to perhaps implement some sort of policy at some level, whether it's board level or lower, that creates some sort of balance. Obviously, I think you've identified a unique situation where we're talking about specialized courses. There may only be 1 or 2 teachers. Having non-subject matter experts, regardless of who they are, whether it's citizens or staff combined, because I assume that other staff members are probably not subject matter experts as well, that's some way of weighting the teacher's view in that case is important, given the AP standards that they have to teach to as well. So I would like to mull that over, and that may be something the board may wish to discuss further with admin. But I appreciate that answer, and again, I appreciate the answer that in this case, the committee seemed pretty comfortable, all members, with the textbooks that have been submitted tonight. So thank you.
And I would add as well, an effort we also made with our committee members, specific to parents. When we contacted them, we were interested in their professional experience or their personal interest. So, for example, we had some experts who, in the business world, professionally, their area of expertise is economics. So how wonderful that we could have a business acumen on that lens. So we have a teacher lens on what we teach and how we teach it to prepare kids for AP or IB, but we also had another perspective, which at times led to really interesting conversations, because a business perspective and a teacher perspective, they saw it differently at times. So it was a really great opportunity to come to an understanding together of what we were hoping kids would walk away with. So I think that I'm proud of that effort, that we made personal phone calls to ask people. We learned that we had a parent who formerly worked in the government in another state. We had econ experts. We had people who were passionate from high school experiences of the content. So I think that's really important too, because we talk about the importance of our kids finding passion and interest in our content. I think it's nice that we can honor that of our community too.
I agree, and I think it warrants the question about how do we engage community members on that level? How do we engage our partners? You know, with Scottsdale Community College is right next door. We have Arizona State University. They have robust departments too, with subject matter experts or people who really care about this that may also warrant participating, even if we're not legally required to include them. Having a small team that is made up of passionate people, regardless of whether they're staff or not, is important. So thank you very much. Yep.
Right, and I did make note, before you said it actually, Board Member Greenberg, about putting in place some consistent practices for curriculum review process. I think that's important. Also, I note that one of our audience members had brought up the issue in the past about the utilization of the materials that we use in our schools. So, making sure that we are investing in materials that are meaningful to learning and application later in life for our students, and that these tools are very important, but they're tools. So page by page textbook sit and get is not a best practice, and it may be necessary at times, but that's not something that we're going to be using these resources. That's not how we're going to use them to implement, because that's not best for kids, or for teachers for that matter, I think. So I think this, anytime we're adopting any type of curriculum or tools to better teach our students, I think it's important to have these conversations about who's making those decisions and what the purpose is of the tool. So thank you to everyone who has participated in this process, not just here and now for these specific materials, but in the past, and hopefully in the future we'll have more people even interested in. Okay, seeing that there are no more questions at this time, I am going to ask for a motion to approve the second read and approval of curriculum, or the approval of the curriculum for adoption implementation, 2022-2023 U.S. Government Politics, AP Macroeconomics, and IB Economics.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Thank you, Dr. Dodds. Karen. Next up is 8H, approval of guaranteed maximum price number 2 of 2 for RFQ 22-21-26, construction manager at risk, Cmar services for Tavon Elementary School. And I believe Dennis is here to give us a presentation.
Good evening, President Snowski, Vice President Dr. Hart-Wells, member of the board, Dr. Menzel. I'm glad to be here. Dr. Menzel sent me a text, "Where are you?" And I was thinking this was a 6 o'clock meeting. Had plenty of time, trying to get ready to go on a little time away from the district, and it seems like it takes more time to get ready to go than it almost not worth it. So tonight we have before you the guaranteed maximum price number 2 for Tavon. Wanted to share with you first and foremost that the objectives in the 2016 bond package were to develop a campus in which you no longer had students crossing the road. Right now, they have their pre-K Panda students across the street. At one point, they had other grade levels across the street, and they were crossing Osborne on a regular basis. So back then, and even still now, the concern is the safety of the students crossing that road. The other thing is, if like all of our schools that haven't been rebuilt, parking and parent queuing for drop-off and pickup is always very challenging. So those were our two primary goals based on the original 2016 bond package. As you know, scope of work can grow when we start getting everybody involved, whether it's the visioning process in which we bring in parents and community members and start to get their input on what it is that we're trying to achieve at the campus. Scope of work does grow. So where we've landed here is goal number 1, goal number 2. Those two original objectives is to make sure that we're good to go as far as kids and safety, parents, and parking and queuing. Then we started talking about Tavon as a school, and they have a lot of resources to get those students to the position where they need to be, whether it's reading, math, whatever the case may be. A lot of resources, a lot of people needing small spaces, and I've talked about this before, that we have a lot of places where there's a big space with a little bit of people. We've tried to really dial that in at Tavon to try and make sure that we were maximizing the efficiency of the campus best we could. So we took a space, and I'll show you that momentarily, in the library, and we've converted that into multiple spaces where those resource instructors can really work closely with a few kids at a time in a private setting, so they're not having to listen over multiple voices, people sharing big spaces, and multiple teachers in that space. So one of the other high priorities for the school, many of our schools that were built prior to the 70s, really even the 80s, didn't have much in the way of PE. I don't know if it was cooler in Arizona back then, but it's not pleasant to be out there in August doing PE. So most of our schools had a very small space. Some of them, like Kiva most recently, had a classroom that had an 8-foot ceiling, so basketball and volleyball were completely out of the question. So a larger PE space. Well, we know that in 2017, we built Cheyenne, a K-8 with competitive sports, a gymnasium for about $2.2 million. That same PE space is about $10 million now. I'm kidding, but probably. So we're proposing a PE space that's outdoor, shaded, with some fans, and it's a durable space, not just a shade structure like the fabric ones that we see all over our district. This will actually be a physical structure that they will be protected from the elements. It just doesn't go all the way to the ground, and it won't be air conditioned. But in shade with fans, you probably shave off 20 to 30 degrees during those August months. And then the rest of the year, it'll be fantastic. And then more staff bathrooms. I believe at the time when we were talking about visioning, there was only one male instructor on the campus. And in one part of the building, there was more male spots than there were female spots to go to the bathroom, so we're fixing that. That was a big deal for the Tavon staff. So why isn't this playing correctly? Hey, tech guys. Oh. Okay, wow, just destroying my thunder here. So, can't see them in there, what they're thinking or doing. We're gonna move on. This was like the best slide in the whole show. So this slide, if I get it to work right, actually showed a rendering of the new administration building, a rendering of the PE space, and the new art room. So all you get to see is this floor plan of the art room, the pull-out gifted space, and some support spaces in that new building. I did send this in advance to the board. We will get this on the website so that everyone can see it, because I know everyone's waiting to see it. So we came back, or we were here some time ago, approved GMP 1. We are very deep in that construction right now. All of that work that's happening this summer is bubbled in red. And these are all rooms that we are converting in some way, shape, or form to make that site more efficient. That was GMP 1 that you approved about a month and a half ago. So this is supposed to scroll. Man, blowing it here. So this was your GMP 1 that we approved previously. And this is our representation of the entirety of the bond associated with this project. We have 9.491919 is our bond commitment, and 674,326 for adjacent ways. So a total cost for this project at $10,166,245. There were 98 subcontractor proposals. We're in the process of doing all final vetting as part of our audit commitment. And then we just basically have a breakdown of every scope of work and the associated costs with that. When people think about their cost of fuel, when you think about site work and all the heavy equipment, the diesel fuel that has to make all of those changes, whether it's the curb machines, the backhoes, the track hose, you name it, they all use diesel fuel. And so we have seen a significant impact both on Pueblo and here at Tavon to the cost of site work, because running that heavy equipment all requires diesel. We've got the adjacent ways. As you know, adjacent ways has some very particular parameters in which we can spend. Site utilities and egress and ingress and egress of emergency vehicles and buses. So we've outlined that, the work that's being done there, some expansion to the driveways, all qualify under adjacent ways. And then you've got three, basically a heavy renovation in the old administration building, which is here in the center. And that's what's going to bring those pre-K students from across the street. So we needed 4 extra spaces. When we dialed it all in, got the program all set, we knew we needed 4 extra spaces. And basically, it was the old administration building that we could renovate to create those spaces. So we'll no longer have students on the south side of Osborne. And then the other item is creating a new administration building. This one started out a little bit bigger than I had hoped. We squeezed it down. Darlene, SPS Plus, and the partnership with Core Construction, we got it to a manageable space with all of the needs met, whether it was the psychologist and the different staffing that they need, the nurse's office, all of that has been met, including what was if you're familiar with Tavon, the front office right now was a stopgap, hurry up, let's throw something up there to keep people from just wandering onto campus. And now we'll have a secure lobby with a secure conference room and no access through that front office unless you're invited. And then lastly, the art and CGP classrooms and an extra set of bathrooms for outdoor use when the kids are at recess. Right now, they have to go into the cafeteria, and then your supervision goes away by having them go there. So this is a good spot on the playground where they can be well supervised. This is the just some minor changes that we're making to the current PE space to secure their storage area and to actually create an office for the PE coaches. And this would be the larger expanded PE area with a new basketball court. And this area is right where some parking spaces and the grease interceptor is. So we've got some movement to do there. We got to make sure we keep the fire lane that you see a little bit on the right in those hashed areas. And then this structure, the rendering shows it so much better. But basically, it's going to provide shade no matter where the sun's at. It's on the north side of the current cafeteria multipurpose building. And then they've got the translucent panels that'll be along the sides to help buffer wind and everything else. So it's not quite a gymnasium, but it's certainly better than the small, about 1,800 square foot PE space that they have now. And we'll be getting rid of this portable, and in its place, we will have a new playground for kindergarten. And so kindergarten will remain in that L-shaped building, and then their playground will be behind them. And then the pre-K that's getting renovated by in the admin building will then go to the current kindergarten space. And then last but not least, we have very old fire alarm over there, so we have to upgrade that to voice-activated fire alarm, and as part of the new buildings, they'll automatically get that, but we have to upgrade all the stuff that in the buildings that we're not touching. So that's the presentation. Sorry you didn't get to see the best slide, but that is it for me.
Vice President Dr. Hart-Wells.
Thank you, President Sanowski. Thank you, Mr. Rayler. And I see our partners, friends from CORE in the audience. Thank you for being here. I actually really liked the presentation you sent to us. So it was a little clunky, but at home when I reviewed it, I thought it was great. And
Yeah.
the way that you went through the numbers was exactly how I would have done it myself. So it was really easy to follow. I also agree that slide, unfortunately, wasn't shown because I have a few questions about it. The art CPG building that looks great. There's a courtyard with what looked like AstroTurf in the rendering, and it dips. At least it was shown to have almost a retention type effect. Is that a functional space where there's going to be drainage?
It's functional. We grow grass in it now, but there are times during the year that
Okay.
it is full of water.
Okay, so that's the same space that's
Same
there now
space.
that's in
Yeah,
the
there's no
courtyard area.
changes
Okay.
to that
All right,
space.
very good. My observation in the kind of key priorities for this construction is that the reasons that were set out in 2016 are really safety issues. It's not a vanity project. And there are a number of safety issues that are going to be addressed with this construction. So that's how I'm looking at this. These aren't wants, these are needs for our students and our staff. I appreciate that there are other features that are listed here are really those that enable where we are now, which is we need to be able to offer robust interventions in small study groups. And I appreciate that that's there. And particularly with play, having that access to play, there's a lot of learning in K through 5 that takes place during play. And so I appreciate that. And I liked that shaded structure. I would imagine it may be more effective and efficient throughout a 12-hour period than the cantilever shade
Yes.
structures that we have on
Yep.
most of the other campuses.
And-
So I liked that.
I liked it so much that I've already proposed it to Desert Canyon Elementary School.
Nice.
Because
Nice.
they-
Yeah, I
they
look
do
forward to
have
seeing it. Yeah.
A PE space up there, which there's no way in today's numbers we'll be able to afford, but we can definitely afford this and
Yeah.
make
Yeah,
their
look,
campus better
About
too.
$500,000 or so,
Yep.
but yeah, it's nice. So my, annoying question that I usually ask, water. So we're talking about restrooms here. Is this an opportunity, or has that already been taken to assess maybe some physical equipment that would address minimizing water usage?
So we are using 1.6 gallon fixtures in all of our spaces. The reason, I know your water question is really tied to the consumption and the rate that we're paying. And we're going to fix that through this project by separating our sewer, or I'm sorry, our irrigation and our potable water. Right now, our potable water and irrigation are combined, and by doing so, the sewer rates are attached to that water, and we use way more irrigation water than we do potable water. And so that causes our sewer rates to go up exponentially, and that's why on that site in particular, the water rates are so high. And so we're going to fix that through this project.
I'm very happy to hear that there's been some analysis to why those rates have been relatively high at Tavon. And I've been kind of poking around on this for the entire time I've been on the board. So I appreciate that you're taking this opportunity to address not just the existing issue, but I hope also consider water consumption usages in the types of equipment that will go into
Yes.
the restrooms. And you raise an interesting, the visioning committee raises an interesting point, which was the ratio of restrooms. I think that would be an interesting analysis across the district to do. I'm guessing it's not limited to Devon.
That would
You don't
be
have to
it.
comment on that, but just for future. Thank you, Mr. Rayler, in all your hard work, and to our friends here from CORE. I think of Tavon, when I first visited Tavon, it just reminds me of a hug, and I think they are well past time for this redo. So thank you for your work.
Board Member Greenberg.
I know the staff who have worked at Tavon and the students probably, and many of the parents are going to be very sad to see the temporary building go. How long has that temporary building been here? Do you know?
Well, long before me, I would venture to say it was the early 90s.
Wow. It's a fascinating amount of time for a temporary building.
Matter of perspective.
It's a matter of perspective. Yeah, no, I just think, I agree with Vice President Hartwell. These are, in many ways, safety needs as opposed to wants. And I think the removal of the temporary building, which has been promised for decades and was promised as part of the 2016 bond override, is an important step there, moving students away from that southern campus side so that they're not having to cross a busy street. That's also very important, and I know the staff have been asking for that and parents for a long time. So I thank you for the very hard work here. We know that costs are increasing every day. We know that you're up against the clock here and up against the wall in many ways, but you've pulled out some magic. You've really made it work, and I thank you and your team for that.
Absolutely. So phase 4, is it really going to be done by 7/29/23? Yes? Love that. Awesome. Good. Thank you. Seeing that there are no more questions or comments, at this time, I would like to make a motion to approve 8H, the guaranteed maximum price number 2 of 2 RFQ 2221, Cmar services for Tavon Elementary School.
So moved.
Is there a,
Second.
thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion at aye. Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. Before we move on to this next part of future agenda items, this does have to do with our future. Welcome to Joshua Friedman. But James Dorr has been with our district
12 years.
12 years, a dozen years, and I feel like you've been here longer than that. Because I remember you first going out to campuses and leading everybody on lockdown drills when we first started doing those in the district, and how scary they were for teachers and kids and stuff, and your calm was very comforting throughout those serious procedures. So I would like to personally thank you for your service here in SUSD. And I hope you have a very secure retirement. All right. Future agenda items. Do any board members have any proposals for future agenda items at this time? Both of you do. Let's start with Vice President Dr. Wells.
Thank you, President Sinowski. I believe this is a reiteration of a request I've made previously, and that was an energy management overview, specifically water usage, water saving measures that we're currently taking, and where we might see savings going forward. This is a direct link back to the budget, which includes a inappropriately named water savings benefit. I would also like, when the time is right, to have a review of the summer boost activities. The summer boost activities. I don't know, we're calling it that this summer, what we did last summer. And if, to the extent possible, any kind of cohort impact for those students that participated either last summer and then the subsequent year, academic outcomes, and then, of course, just what occurred this past summer would be very helpful and useful. Thank you.
Board Member Greenberg?
I would just like to do an analysis. Yesterday, we had a board meeting with the same people that took 2.5 hours, but with only one agenda item. But tonight had several, and it's only taken 2 hours. So I think that's an important question. What happened?
So you'd like to propose that for future consideration?
Absolutely. I think we need to analyze it. Probably a few hours on that topic, actually.
Okay, thank you. I don't really have any for future consideration. I can ask, I feel comfortable asking questions and staff and employees. Is now an appropriate time to say congratulations for the work and interest-based negotiations?
You can.
Okay, I'd like to, I see in our crowd tonight, people have done a lot of hard work on behalf of those they represent. And I would be remiss without recognizing the hard work that they've invested in the school district and putting forward employment agreements for administrators, our support staff, and our certified staff. Thank you for your patience. Yes, I'm so excited for you all. And dates for upcoming meetings. Our next meeting is Tuesday, July 12th, 4 p.m. Not 6 p.m. 4 p.m. That will be a special governing board meeting and public hearing to adopt the budget, as I understand, and improve Jason Waste. Okay, and that will be at the MDA, and then Tuesday, August 2nd, 6 p.m., and we will have a special governing board meeting at the MDA. And then back here, Tuesday, August 16th at 6 p.m. And with that, I would like a
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned at 7:07 PM.
It's a mystery.